Get it, boys.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this edition of HTF Bets. My name is Robert Husby, and I'm joined along with my usual co-host, Nick Geddes. Nick, how you doing today?
I'm good, Robert. I've been having a good week, and I'm glad to get on here and get into baseball as we have pitchers and spring training is underway soon. So I'm ready to go.
Yeah, absolutely. We touched a little bit in baseball last week when we had Sean on, but we're going to go a little bit more in depth into favorites and odds and all that. We talked a little bit about teams. We're going to talk about more players this time around, and we brought on the host. Who better than the host of Take Me Out to the Podcast, Johnny Jackson? Johnny, it's your first time on the show. What's up, Johnny? How you doing?
So I'm just gonna let everyone else know that I just about 5 minutes before we started the show, I actually fell on my face in my house. So if you look right here on my shoulder, there's actually a mark from my floor where I fell on my face, which is fantastic.
Well, I hope it didn't mess up things too badly for you. So as we get into this, we're going to talk first. We're going to do National League MVP. We touched a little bit last week. Me and Nick said Juan Soto. We were kind of running a little bit fast, so it was kind of off the top of our heads. But Nick, let's go to you first, since you mentioned Juan Soto. I doubt that pick has changed for you. What do you think Juan Soto has to do to win MVP this year? I mean, obviously everybody's riding high on him. You know, he's going to get a new contract pretty soon. What is it about Juan Soto that he has to do to win MVP this year, you think?
Just stay healthy and play all the games. I mean, listen, I think Juan Soto might have been the MVP last year if he hadn't missed the first 10 games of the season due to the COVID scare that he had, and he couldn't return even though he had a false positive. But Juan Soto was that good last year. He's a guy that legitimately, I think midway through the season, don't be surprised if this guy's hitting close to 400. Don't be surprised. I think in this era right now where there's about a couple guys that can get there, Juan Soto is one of the guys that can kind of flirt with 400 a little bit. And I think he's definitely going to do that. Of course, he's got 40 home run, 50 home run power in his arsenal as well. And he's only 21 years old. So he's the guy's barely had a cup of coffee in Major League Baseball, and he's just taken it by storm. I think as long as he stays healthy and you see him play 150, 155 games this year, that no doubt about it that he's going to win the MVP in the NL.
Yeah, I think, like you brought up some great points there. I think Juan Soto just he's taking the league by storm right now. And it's really crazy because at 21, that is a really, really young age to start dominating. I mean, you see a guy like Tatis who hasn't even played a full season. He's already getting paid, big money. So if Soto comes and gets an MVP type season, I mean, it's going to be amazing what he's going to get paid. So we'll have to keep watch for that. Johnny, do you have anybody else that you see for NL MVP? I think he's tied with Betts and odds as far as the favorites go. Are you sticking with any of the favorites? Are you going off the wire a little bit?
For the NL, I'm just gonna keep it pretty basic. I think it's really hard to root against Mookie Betts. He just does everything right. Name a part of baseball that the guy does poorly, I'll give you $100. But the thing I think is really interesting about Juan Soto, the Nationals got Kyle Schwarber, so they're moving Soto to right field. And as a right fielder, if he even plays like league average defense, which is very possible, if Juan Soto can learn to be league average defensively in right field versus left field, that is going to help him a lot in the MVP conversation, especially with a lot of the advanced metrics.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, learning to play the other position and getting that defense down even somewhat is going to definitely help him out. I mean, listen, they wondered who they were going to replace Bryce Harper with, and it looks like they're replacing him with a guy way younger and could eventually end up being way better than Bryce Harper. But no, absolutely. I think Soto is a good pick. I can't really go against that either. I think the NL is sort of, I mean, there's a lot of guys. There's Bellinger, there's Tatis, but I just think, I was saying this last week, I think it's going to be very hard for any of the Dodgers players to stand out for MVP because there's so many good players on the Dodgers that they're really going to have to, like a guy like Betts will have to, just hit a bunch of home runs, have a over 300 ERA, over 300 batting average or something like that in order to win MVP, I think, just because him and Bellinger and, all these guys, it's just so stacked. So I think Soto's a good pick. We'll move over to AL MVP, and Johnny, I'll go to you first. Who do you see AL MVP? The favorite, the very clear favorite, at least in the betting world, is Mike Trout. Do you see anybody but Mike Trout winning this? And if it is not Mike Trout, why do you think they should win MVP, or why do you think they will win MVP?
So if you have $50 to blow, right? If you just got a nice little tax refund, you got $50 to blow. Shohei Ohtani's your guy. Hear me out, right? If he is the hitter he is, the hitter he has been for his entire major league career. That's a 4-win player. Easy, breezy, beautiful 4-win player. He's set to go as a pitcher for the year, for the whole season. Joe Madden confirmed it. If he is even like a league average, even above a league average, give him like a 3.5 ERA, you know, not 9+ K per 9. That's another 3.5 wins there. Shohei Ohtani could league average pitcher his way into a 7-win season. And also just with the novelty of being a first real big two-way player over an entire season, Shohei Ohtani could fetch you some nice money.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, he's plus 3,300 right now, I think, in a lot of sports books. So betting on Shohei Ohtani would get you a lot of money if he ends up winning MVP. It's a long shot. There's a reason he's not among the super favorites, but definitely off the cuff. And you know what? Maybe it does happen. Nick, do you agree with Johnny there? You disagree with Ohtani? Do you see somebody else? Where are you looking in the AL?
There's no way I can't disagree with Johnny. I mean, come on, or cannot disagree with Johnny. I mean, Shohei Ohtani can't stay. You're talking about staying healthy. He's the bipolar of healthy. He never stayed healthy in his career. You said he's going to pitch well. When has he pitched well? He hasn't pitched well. Johnny, please tell me the last time you've seen him pitch well.
The first inning of his last thing. Okay, so I hate how the Angels should not have pitched him at all last year. That was the dumbest decision that I've ever seen in my life because he has like the frayed UCL. They got him Tommy John surgery. Finally, the kid, when they signed him, had like 1.5 UCLs. Are you kidding me? Like absolutely insane. The Angels have mismanaged him. If he's healthy, big if. That's why I said if you got $50 to blow, not 5,000.
Well, yeah, if you have $50 to blow, go ahead and I guess put it on Ohtani. But I'm going to go in a little bit of a direction, but a guy that continues to just get slept on, and that's DJ LeMahieu. This guy, I talked about Juan Soto flirting with 400. DJ LeMahieu does that every single year. 366 average last year in that 60-game sample. I mean, just an incredible, one of the best, maybe the best pure hitter in all of baseball that just continues to just be so undervalued, I think. And you're starting to see that this guy was not made by Colorado. It's clear as day. And he had 10 home runs last year in that 60-game season. I don't think it's out of the realm that he could push for 30 home runs. And I think if DJ LeMahieu hits anywhere from 340 to 370, which I think he could, and he hits maybe close to 30 home runs, and you already know he's going to have the runs, he's going to play solid defense up the middle for the Yankees. And to me, there's not really a clear, I know Mike Trout obviously is going to be the clear-cut pick for a lot of people, but I think voter fatigue eventually is going to set in for Mike Trout, unfortunately, because it just does. I think DJ LeMahieu is one of those guys who, at this point in his career, now that he's getting close to his mid-30s, I think if he puts up another incredible season over an 162-game season-long average, I think DJ LeMahieu's got to be an MVP, a guy you'd be looking at for MVP this year.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I mean, LeMahieu was a guy that the Yankees just sat waiting to re-sign him, and they finally did. They finally got him back. I think he's going to do big things with them. I think you brought up some great points there. I mean, he's just a great hitter, and hitting 30 at Yankee Stadium, or at least, hitting half of those at Yankee Stadium, it's not super hard. I mean, Yankee Stadium has a really short porch. So for a guy like that has power, that's used to hitting in Colorado and hit well last year, I don't see why he couldn't hit well again. I think he's just that good of a ball player. But no, as far as like my pick for AL MVP, it's hard to go against Trout, but especially you see it in the betting world. It's Trout's at plus 200. Everybody else is over 1,000. So it's pretty insane to see the insane drop off. At least bettors and sports books value Trout as well as they should. But I'm going to have to go. I think I'm going to say Aaron Judge here. Aaron Judge is just, it's the tale of the Yankees. Like the problem with the Yankees is like, they can't stay healthy. And so when you have a guy like Judge, who is one of those guys that really can't stay healthy, it's hard to pick a guy like that for MVP. But, I think Judge is coming into training camp. I think he's got a new mindset. I think he's coming in, yeah, I was just going to say, he's coming in with some new teeth. He looks good.
Your health. Y'all love putting y'all's money on your health over there. I see it.
No, listen, I mean, I don't want to pick Trout. So I'm going with a guy that I think can win. He's a betting favorite. If he can stay healthy, and that's a big if, especially with the rest of the Yankees team, especially the Yankees starting rotation. We'll get to that when we talk Cy Young. It's going to be hard, but if Judge can make it through 90% of the season pretty healthy, he is a great hitter, and he can hit home runs, and he can put up a decent batting average. So, and Judge's defense is pretty good. So I think, if Judge can stay healthy, again, asterisk on it, but I think Judge could, finish pretty decently in MVP voting. So it's a little off the radar, but I'll go with Judge. He's a top 5 favorite in betting, so I'm not going to go against that. It is I think a decent pick. But we'll go to Cy Young now. For National League Cy Young, Johnny, who do you have winning? Trevor Bauer, who just joined the Dodgers, is actually second in favor, which shocks me because he's not even going to be the Dodgers' #1 pitcher. So it's going to be very hard, I think, for him to win it. But who do you see winning the National League Cy Young?
So it's obviously very hard to bet against Jacob deGrom, but we're all about the big bets. We're all about the bets that don't make a lot of sense, but maybe Yu Darvish. He's nasty. He strikes out a lot of guys. The thing about the 2020 Cy Young is like the whole Mickey Mouse season. 60 games, such a small sample size. But Yu Darvish has been that guy for a very long time. He's picked up like 7 new pitches in the past 24 hours. I mean, the man's insane. I just love Yu Darvish to death, even though he's on the Padres. He's my Cy Young pick.
Yeah, I think that's a fair pick. I mean, Darvish is getting up there in age, but I think he's shown that he can still handle a workload like that. And I think on the Padres, he's going to be one of those guys that's going to be key for them this season. Nick, who do you see as National League Cy Young winner this year?
I'm going to go with the young lefty in Atlanta, Max Fried. I'm going to go with Max Fried. Max Fried took another big step in his development last year, and he was kind of forced upon to be the ace of that Braves staff. And of course, bringing in Charlie Morton and eventually getting Mike Soroka back into that rotation is going to take some of the ease off him. But I still think he's going to stand out like crazy. And you saw in that playoffs last year when Atlanta was in, he was electric when he was in there. I mean, he looked like he got even better.
Except when he faced Corey Seager like 4 times.
Right, Johnny, we're not talking, that season's dead to me. Dead. So
your team's dead too.
Go watch last season's show. I debunked everything that you're saying.
Go look at your roster now compared to like a month ago, dude.
Talk to me when you develop players like the Rays do and get back to me.
Develop players like the Rays do? Develop players like the Rays do?
As I was saying, Max Fried looks like he's going to be a star. And I think in a crowded NL, because there's a lot of guys I could have picked in the NL here, Max Fried is going to be my guy. And I think he's definitely lower on the betting odds as well. So I'm going with Max Fried. Blake Snell's, by the way, 4th in Cy Young odds. And that's hogwash. He's not winning the Cy Young. I just want to point that out because he can't get out of 4 or 5 innings in a start. So.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily think Blake Snell will win it either. I think Blake Snell is going to do just fine in San Diego, unfortunately. I'd like to pick Walker Buehler here, but I think I'm going to go boring. I think I'm going to agree with you, Nick. I was thinking Max Fried as well. I think, like you said, took huge steps in his development last year, regardless of what happened in the playoffs. And thank God it did happen in the playoffs against the Dodgers. But, I think Max Fried is a guy that absolutely is a young guy who is only getting better every year. And if he can stay healthy, and he should be able to, I think Max Fried is a guy that absolutely will put up Cy Young type numbers this year. And Atlanta needs it because, they're a team that I think is ready to take the next step. They're going to have Soroka back this year too. So it should be a pretty good Braves team coming into the season, at least until, further notice. But, sticking with the theme of Cy Young and pitchers, Nick, I'll go right back to you. Who do you see for AL?
I'm going to go with Hyun-Jin Ryu, someone that y'all know very well with the Dodger organization. Last year, coming over to Toronto, I think he kind of got lost in the shuffle, I think. A lot of people, I think, really underrated him or thought that he was going to come right back to reality after leading the league in ERA in 2019. It was the exact opposite. He pitched to a 2.82 ERA, and he was pretty decent in that start against the Rays until the one inning where it fell apart in the playoffs. But Hyun-Jin Ryu, I think, has had a track record of success throughout his career. He maybe should have won the 2019 Cy Young. He was definitely in the contention for that as well. But similar to my DJ LeMahieu pick, I think these are guys that they don't get a lot of hype around them because they're considered, just very boring, basic. They're not young. But I think these are guys that definitely are due to win these individual awards. And again, the AL to me is very, very wide open. It looks like it's Garrett Cole and everybody else right now in the betting odds. And so going against the grain there and trying to get a good bet pick, I think Hyun-Jin Ryu is a good bet there.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think with the AL, it's similar to MVP where it's just such a big drop off between Trout and everybody else. I mean, at least with the odds, it's the same thing. It's Cole and then everybody else. So Ryu is probably a safe bet. I mean, it's probably a good one as well. I think he'll do well for Toronto this year again. Johnny, who do you think as far as AL Cy Young is concerned?
So interesting name that do I think he's going to win the Cy Young? Probably not, but I think there's a decent chance it might happen. Jose Barrios. Now, the stuff has always been elite. That slurve is just out of this world. But also with Kenta Maeda there and hopefully Jake Odorizzi going back. Also, he does have like at absolute worst a top 3 defensive shortstop in baseball behind him now in Andrelton Simmons. I think Jose Barrios takes a huge step forward this year, finally, which we've been waiting on for years now. And I think he could put himself right in that Cy Young race.
Yeah, I mean, another young guy that's ready to take the next step, as you said. I think that's a good off the cuff bet right there. Yeah, I personally don't believe Garrett Cole's going to win it. I just don't see it with the Yankees again with their starting rotation. There's just so many question marks. I mean, Cole's going to be good, but I don't know if he's going to put up Cy Young numbers this year. But as far as Cy Young, I think for my guy, I think I'm going to say Lucas Giolito. Giolito finished right outside the top 5 in voting last season. His ERA wasn't great. I think it was just under 4, but he's another guy that's, he's right in the prime of his career. He's ready to take that next step. I think the White Sox are ready to take the next step, and he's part of a team that is ready to rise. And I think if he can take that next step this year, he absolutely will be at least in top 3 voting, I think, as the odd makers have it. I just think he's that good of a pitcher. The White Sox they're one of these young, exciting teams to watch. And I think he's really part of it, especially because you look at the starting rotation and you see that they have a lot of really good pitchers. They're still waiting for Michael Kopech to come back from injury and pitch a full season. So we'll see where they're at this year. But no, I think Lucas Giolito is a decent pick for MVP or for Cy Young, in the American League. So with that being said, great insight, boys. I love talking baseball. We're right next to spring training. So it's right around the corner, and we'll see how our predictions and our bets pan out the rest of the season. Stay tuned with us as we head into the next segment and talk fantasy basketball. Stick with us.
Welcome back to HTF Bets this week, and we're going to jump straight into fantasy basketball, where last week we had the burial of Okello. He still has failed to show his face this week, and we have another one to come. We have another member of our league in here to talk what's going on. Johnny, fantasy basketball has not been very kind to you. What's been going wrong with your team?
I feel like the Tampa Bay Rays. I feel like I should be there, but I'm just so bad. I'm just so bad all the time.
You are never allowed to come on this show again. You are one and done. One and done. That's what you are on this show.
Just like the Rays in the World Series, baby.
Oof.
You are one and done on this show. And I'm moving on now. Robert, how are you doing with your team, and who are you looking? What kind of moves are you looking to make this week?
Well, thanks to Sean for jinxing me. I lost to Okello, so now I'm 3-4. But I'm beating Sean currently in fantasy. I don't know how much longer that'll last. I'm up like 40 or 50 points on him, so it's not that big of a lead. He's got everybody playing again. So not spectacular, not awful, but just kind of I'm aggressively mediocre, as Johnny would usually say. Aggressively mediocre.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. 3-6. Could not beat Sean last week. I'm getting the brake speed off me right now from Okello, unfortunately. My entire bench is just full of injuries right now, but they're not guys that I can necessarily drop. So I'm in a bad state of flux, and that's what I was going to get into with my roster moves. Andre Drummond is about to go. It's not because of his talent, but because Cleveland said they're no longer going to play him this year until they trade him. And the trade deadline is not till March, and I can't wait this long with Andre Drummond. So he's just taking a spot on my bench, and I plan on replacing him with Marvin Bagley, who, despite not really fulfilling his potential this far into his career, he's been pretty solid the last week or two of play. He's averaging about 31 to 32 fantasy points a game. I think it is in the last 5 games. So Marvin Bagley is somebody that I envision putting on my roster and getting rid of Andre Drummond. Robert, what are you seeing on the free agency pickups?
Yeah, I said last week that I picked up Victor Oladipo. Since then, he has not played yet. He's finally back in practice, so he should be playing any minute now. I still think Victor Oladipo, he's averaging over 30 points. I still think Victor Oladipo is a really good ad. I had to drop Marcus Smart for him. But, Johnny got Marcus Smart, but, I couldn't take it with Marcus Smart being out a couple weeks. So I mentioned that last week. This week I picked up Serge Ibaka. I'm not like super huge on Serge Ibaka, but, he got me like 30 points the other night. So he's a guy that's coming off the bench, and he's, going to get me at least some fantasy points. And compared to some of the other guys that are in our league that are either injured or just really underperforming, I mean, Ibaka is not the worst pickup in the world. So I've been satisfied with picking up Ibaka so far. We'll see how long that lasts, though.
Yeah, free agency is starting to get thin. I don't know about you, but it's getting really thin this late into the season. You're almost stuck with what you have at this point.
Yep.
Johnny, you would just mention Marcus Smart. Johnny was going crazy over there. Probably the weirdest obsession I've ever seen with a player. Johnny, what is it with Marcus Smart?
He's just such a cool guy. Like, so there's like the whole thing of like you want to get a beer with somebody. I would absolutely get a beer with Marcus Smart when I turn 21 because, legal. But I just love Marcus Smart. Huge Marcus Smart guy. I have a Zoom background that I can switch it to. I'll switch it for you right now. Nick's favorite. And it's not loaded on my computer yet, so we're not going to do that. Big Marcus Smart guy. I got Marcus Smart. That's all I want. I will lose every game. I've already lost every game. I will lose all of them just to be with Marcus Smart.
Yeah, that's just the weirdest thing I've ever heard. Maybe I don't know anybody who is dying to have Marcus Smart. I gotta have Marcus Smart on my team, but here we are. It's Johnny Jackson, of course. But with that, we're gonna wrap up this segment and stay with us on the other side of the break as we're gonna bring our boxing analyst Johan as we're gonna get into the Canelo fight taking place this weekend down in Miami.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to our third and final segment here at HTF Bets, and we're talking boxing here ahead of fight weekend as Canelo Alvarez fights his mandatory against Untitled Chapter. We have Johan Blanco joining us for boxing. He knows all this stuff about fighting. So, Johan, welcome to the show. Glad to have you.
Yeah, it's good to be back, guys.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Johan, I'm going to go to you first. Obviously, Canelo is a heavy favorite. He's favored at minus 4,000 right now. I mean, just a clear favorite. This is the number one boxer right now in the world. What can you tell me about these two guys? Obviously, we know a lot about Canelo. We know how good he is, but how tough do you think Avni's going to fight him this weekend?
So with Yildirim's fighting style, he's very aggressive. He's a very, I would say, more overly aggressive fighter. He likes to put the pace on somebody. He really likes to go head first against anybody. He really just goes forward, and that's really his only way moving. He doesn't really fight backward. He doesn't fight at angles. He fights forward. You can see that in fights against Anthony Durrell and fights against Ryan Ford and even Chris Eubank Jr. He really has one pace, and that's forward, and that's constant pressure. So I would say his only chance is really to kind of disrupt the footwork of Canelo Alvarez, because we all know that Canelo Alvarez has some of the best footwork in boxing. If he's able to cut those angles, maybe he has a chance. But let's be honest, guys. We're talking about the face of boxing. We're talking about the top two, and he's not two, pound for pound best boxers in the world. You know what I mean? Canelo Alvarez, he's just one of the most complete fighters I've ever seen come out of Mexico. He has power in both his right and left hand. He has amazing footwork. But one thing that I think is his best attribute that's very underrated is his defense. My goodness. I mean, the head movement that Canelo Alvarez has, the way that he's able to, just evade punches, the way that he's able to, block, it's something of a masterclass. So, yeah, even though this is Avni's, title shot, it's more of a showcase at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Canelo, you don't even have to be super educated on boxing like myself. I'm not super huge into boxing, but the name Canelo Alvarez and you know how good he is, and he's going to bring his best. I mean, really, the best fighter we've seen in boxing probably since Floyd Mayweather retired. I mean, obviously he fought while Floyd was active, but I think Canelo's just, you mentioned the footwork, the defense, very reminiscent of Floyd. I mean, and it's crazy to think that Canelo's only 30. So, I mean, he's been around a long time and he's only gotten better. And right now he's still in his prime. So, Nick, when it comes to Canelo Alvarez and this fight, how do you see this one going? Do you think Canelo is, obviously, I think everybody's pretty consistent on Canelo is going to win this fight. How do you see this fight going though? How do you see it ending? How do you see the result? Who comes out on top?
Yeah, it feels like this fight is definitely all Canelo all day, no matter what the decision is going to be. But I think this fight that actually might go the distance. It has a really good chance to, because if you go off of the track record, Canelo has one knockout in the last 4 years, and when Yildirim in his case, he's gotten one knockout in the last 3 years. So these guys they can knock out, no doubt about it. Canelo especially has that potential to get those knockouts. He did it to Kovalev, I think, 2 fights ago. So Canelo could do it, but I think that at this point right now, and the fact that this is a fight that, it is a mandatory fight. This is by no means the top contender in this division. So I think this is definitely a fight that I could see going a long ways and end up being a decision, but I think pretty handily that it should be Canelo's.
Yeah, I don't think you'll find many that argue that at all. Johan, how are you seeing this one? And do you agree with Nick? You think it's going the distance? You see Canelo out on top? Who are you betting on here?
I'm sorry, Nick, but I'm going to have to disagree with you on this one just because the way that Avni fights, he's superly over aggressive and it's going to leave a lot of openings for Canelo to just counter punch him. And Canelo is one of the hardest punchers, not even just in the middleweight division, but in boxing in general. So I'll say the 6th or 7th round, I do see a stoppage, maybe not even a knockout, but maybe even a technical knockout where the ref has to stop the fight. I definitely see that. And also because another reason is because Omni got stopped by Chris Eubank Jr. Chris Eubank Jr. is nowhere near Canelo, and he fights as sloppy as Omni. So if he tries to fight like that against a guy who's as technical and as a masterclass as Canelo, he's going to have a long night ahead of him.
Yeah, all great points there. All great points. I think with Canelo here, I think I'm going to have to go. You're not going to make much money here because Canelo is just such a heavy favorite. So if you're betting on him, I mean, he's minus 4,000. You're just not going to make a ton of money just because he is such the heavy favorite, as well as you should be. But no, I see this, based on the points you brought up, I could see this going at least 10. I don't think it'll go the distance. I think Canelo, like you brought up, does have knockout power. He does have the punching strength. I really think Canelo, is just that type of fighter, and fighting a guy that's really not the true number one contender, just kind of having to be there and having to fight the best in the business. I mean, you're talking about a guy that probably is not going to be able to keep up with Canelo as well as others can. So before we end the segment, Johan, I'm going to go back to you real quick. What do you think is next for Canelo? Obviously, Canelo, has kind of done it all. He's kind of won it all. Where do you think Canelo goes from here after this mandatory fight? What's next for him?
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping Canelo wins. I mean, it's almost a certainty, but I'm hoping because I'm 0-3 right now on HTF Bets when it comes to predictions. So I'm hoping that I get my first dub. But what's next for Canelo after this is the fight that I'm most likely wanting to watch, and that's in May against Billy Joe Saunders. Now, they already came to an agreement for about in May, but that is the biggest fight that he can make at super middleweight right now. Billy Joe Saunders does have a title, and I think he does have the tools to, give Canelo the hardest test of his career besides Floyd Mayweather Jr. And that is the fight to make. So after Yildirim in May, we're looking at Billy Joe versus Canelo.
Good pick there, Johan. I agree. I mean, listen, we're not doing too great here on bets as far as predictions go, at least you and me. Nick, on the other hand, has been pretty solid picking guys when we talk UFC, when we talk MMA, when we talk boxing. I think, obviously he picked the Conor fight pretty well as well. So Nick, I'm going to go over to you. After Canelo most likely wins and we're hopefully all most likely correct picking him, where do you, obviously Johan brought up Billy Joe Saunders next. What would you like to see from Canelo, here on out?
Well, I'm going to go off the cuff again, as I always do, but it's always worked out. I am great with betting with boxing. Don't anybody mistake you on that one. And so I am going to pound this table right now for Terrence Crawford, because Terrence Crawford is 37-0. He is the pound for pound best fighter right now in ESPN's rankings. and Canelo Alvarez is consensus maybe the best boxer in the entire world. It is time to get these two guys in a ring together. I don't give a dang about weight class, this and that. Let's get these two bulls in the ring together right now while they're in their prime. And that's what boxing's about. It's about the big matchups. We want these big pay-per-view matchups. We got it last year. We had Fury and Wilder. We're going to get that again. I personally don't need to see that again as the big premier fight of 2021. Just give me Canelo and Terrence Alvarez. Just throw it out there. Because who else does Canelo really need to prove? What else does he have to prove in the middleweight division? I truthfully don't think there's anybody left in the middleweight division that really will really get on him unless Canelo just has an off day somewhere out of nowhere, which he really has not in his entire career. So just give me Canelo and Terrence Crawford and call it a day.
Yeah, I mean, listen, that's the thing. I think with boxing, it's always about the headline fights. And, as a person who is a casual when it comes to boxing, not so much MMA, but when it comes to boxing, the big names bring it out. Canelo, I'm going to be watching the fight this weekend, because it is Canelo Alvarez. In the future, Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua, Deontay Wilder, you're talking about all those guys. Yeah, that'll bring me out to watch. So yeah, watching two guys who are consensus some of the best in the world, absolutely, you go and watch that fight. You pay for that fight. So no, absolutely agree there. I'm looking forward to the fight, even though I don't think it's going to be that competitive. I think it'll still be a good fight to watch. It's always a pleasure to watch Canelo. I mean, you're watching a living legend in the making here in Canelo. So, it should be a good fight regardless. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me. Johan, thanks for coming on and talking fighting. We always love to talk fighting here, talking about our bets for that. And thank you at home for watching us every week. We'll be back right here, same time, same place next week as we move into another week ahead of us. Thanks for joining us here on HTF Bets. Have a great week.
That's what I'm talking about. Wait! Okay, now, from the beginning.